Hey guys, before we get started, I just want to let you know this show is brought to you by the Vitalizer Plus. It's a brand new product that we are very, very proud and excited to offer in our store. And it's a great tool to bring some water alchemy into your kitchen. And for those that are unfamiliar with this tool, it's really awesome because it allows you to structure water. And for those that aren't familiar, structured water is how water originally comes up from the earth. The idea is based on implosion technology that was talked about by Victor Schauberger and other people who are very much familiar with this idea of the 0 point. And when you spin water and vortex it creates an implosion. And it actually helps structure the water crystals and the molecules of the water itself so they become wetter and more micronized. And this allows you to be able to deliver nutrients into the cells as opposed to having the nutrients not being able to penetrate the inside of your cells. And so with the Vitalizer Plus, you can put your pre-filtered water into this contraption and spin it for 9 minutes, and then you can drink that water that has more oxygen in it, more minerals, and all of those compounds actually get delivered into the cells itself. So the water becomes much more bioavailable and nutritive. It's an incredible machine to bring some more alchemy into your kitchen. And it's called the Vitalizer Plus. If you want to learn more about it, there's 3 videos on our store that you can learn more about what this machine does. And I highly recommend it. It's really, really great. So you can check out those in our store too. And I also want to let you know that this show is brought to you by the Good Morning, Good Evening Qigong course. And we've had so many great testimonials about this course. And I love it myself. I do it 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening. And it's a way to build your life force energy, build your qi, your prana, your life force, and it's a way to conserve energy, and it's a really great way to ground yourself and to bring more of a moving meditation into your life. And I find it really, really just incredibly beneficial. I do meditation myself, a sitting meditation, but there's something about doing a moving meditation where you're working with the qi and building your life force in the morning and in the evening. It takes 10 minutes twice a day, and I highly recommend it because that's what we're all here for, is to build our life force, live longer, be healthier. And this is a great little meditative exercise you can do. You can follow along with Tristan and Peter Ragnar in the course itself. So if you guys are interested in those are both in our store. And you can get to our store by going to extremehealthradio.com/shop, or there's links at the top and bottom of our website for that as well. So make sure to check those out. And I hope you guys enjoy the show. Everybody hear us in the chat room. Kate, I think you just asked if everyone can hear us, right?
Yes, we'll find out here in a second.
Okay, we technically are live, so we'll find out in a minute when people can hear us or
Perfect.
not. So thank you, everybody, for joining us in the chat room. It's really cool. We got a lot of listeners in there, so appreciate you guys. We got C-Biz, Julio, and a bunch of other people. So thank you guys for being a part of our show, and yeah. It's going to be a lot of fun today.
I was going to say another day, another dollar, and I thought that's silly. And then what came to me was another day, another opportunity.
There you go.
That's a great way to wake up on a Friday and go, gosh, what is the opportunity that's waiting before me today? It's just such a beautiful life we have, and you never know what it holds. So
I know we were just talking before the show with Laura about how I came to contact her, and it was through our former guest and friend, Dr. Richard Massey. And we're just talking about how interesting it is in today's world where you can do these shows and you can talk and you can put information out there. You never know whose life it impacts or who gets touched by it or who reads it or who listens to it. It's just it's a funny world we live in, isn't it?
So you trust that it falls upon the ears that are waiting to hear it, really, and find its way to you. And that's how we found out about Laura and her work. So
that's true.
It's really exciting.
So this is going to be a good one. It's my contention that God is always speaking to us. So We're going to have Laura on. We'll introduce her in just a second. So I want to thank all you guys for joining us. This is episode 411 of 412, right?
Oh my gosh, hold on.
I think it's 412.
Hold on. I flipped the page.
We'll get it right one of these days.
412.
412? Yep. All right, cool. So this is episode 412 of Extreme Health Radio. So if you want to check out the show notes of anything that we talk about, Kate is going to do a great job. She always does a great job writing everything down.
Well, thank you.
You do. So you can grab those at extremehealthradio.com/412 if you want to grab those. And we are 100% listener supported. So thank you guys for joining or checking out our store and supporting us that way. So we appreciate it. That's how we're able to do all of this for free. And we do broadcast every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So if you would like to join the live show and make some friends in the chat room and interact with the other listeners and ask your questions to the guest, you can join us at extremehealthradio.com/live every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So that's where you can do that. And as I said before, this is episode 412. Laura Powers from healingpowers.net. We're going to get into a lot about spirituality and energy and stress, emotion, negativity, and how all these things affect our health. And she's got her own podcast as well on her website, healingpowers.net. And she's done a lot of work in LA and Los Angeles with spiritual work, and she's doing a lot of great stuff. So thank you so much, Laura, for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you were just telling me before that you just landed in New York.
Yes. I've been recently branching out into New York and splitting my time between New York and LA, although I traveled a lot of other cities as well. Yeah,
I said on your bio you've sort of been all over the world.
Yes. I've always been a bit of a gypsy, and whenever opportunity has arisen, I've taken it, and sometimes I've made it happen myself too.
What are some of your favorite countries?
Oh my gosh, that's really tough. Well, I do love the UK. I was born in France, so I have to mention there. I love Egypt. I love Spain, China. Those are definitely some of the top.
Wow. Is Egypt as dangerous as they're playing it out to be?
Well, I have to say that I worked there in 2001, but before 9/11, and I haven't returned since then. I feel like I would like to, and I can't say personally. I did feel for a while to stay away, but I feel like it's all right now psychically. So
yeah.
That said, I use my angels to help protect me and go into situations that a lot of other people would probably feel unsafe to go in, because I have extra guidance and protection just because I know how to call on it. So that does allow me to go into places that other people might consider unsafe.
And speaking of angels, I forgot to mention this during the intro, but you wrote a couple books, or actually 4 books: Angels and Manifesting, Angels and Life and the Afterlife, and Diary of a Ghost Whisperer. How did you start out communicating with angels, and what was the beginning of all this for you?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting process for me. So I actually started out as a child being very clairvoyant and psychic, empathic, and I actually saw ghosts and a lot of dark stuff, actually, demons and dark entities. And growing up, I actually was really concerned I was crazy, because it was clear to me after, looking and seeing things and that other people weren't reacting. So right. I came to the conclusion that it was just me and all in my head. I remember asking my mother when I was about 7 years old if she saw things, and based on her response, I knew that she didn't know what I was talking about. So I pretty much kept it to myself. And then later in high school, I was at a cemetery at night, and it was very active, and was with a friend and asked him if he saw things. And once again, he said no. And so I really just internalized it. I was quite scared of being labeled as crazy, of what might happen to me, of being criticized. And so I really kept it in for many, many years. And it wasn't until I was in college that a family friend described the ghost that I had seen but not told anybody about that I realized I wasn't crazy. And to be honest, when I realized I wasn't sure what was more scary, to be crazy or to realize that this stuff was real.
Right. Wow. Yeah,
I know,
so
right?
I was still pretty terrified and really shut down psychically. I just decided, if this is here, I really don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. And I was pretty successful for years. For almost, less than 10 years, maybe 7 years, just shut it all out. And I continued to live my life and lived my life very logically at that point, very much analytically, did everything you're supposed to do. I got married, and I got a nice house, and advanced degree, and just was doing everything you're supposed to, and ended up in a real crisis point in my life right when I turned 30. And I was unemployed, I was physically ill, I was in a bad marriage, and I went to a psychic because I just didn't know what else to do. Mm-hmm. And she said to me, well, when you shut everything out, you shut out what you needed to know, which made sense. And she said it was important for me to open up and invite the angels in. She introduced the idea of angels to me. And so I did, and right away I had an incredible angelic experience. My life just really transformed from there. And, I want to share with people that I really feel like our minds, our lives, and our energy fields are very much like a garden. If you don't plant flowers, what automatically show up are the weeds. Mm. So even though I am profoundly clairvoyant, what rushed into my life because I didn't know how to and didn't do was invite the light in. And so the dark was just there. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as I asked the light in, asked the angels in, everything transformed immediately. So
how did you ask the angels in? What was the process?
It's very simple. I mean, it's the angels hear our thoughts and intentions. So all you have to do is really think it. Mm-hmm. Invite in your mind. If you're in a place where you can say it out loud and you'd like to do that, you're welcome to do that. But basically, they work through intention, and as long as we're clear with our intention, then they honor that.
Does everyone have access to angels, or are there people that just are all, I hate to say it, but just kind of, either closed off or just all darkness that don't have access to this help?
Well, everybody has access. There isn't anyone who doesn't have access. However, yes, there are people who are very much in the dark, or they believe that working through the dark is what they need to do, or where they can have power. Mm-hmm. So if you believe that, then you're probably not going to reach out to the angels, but the truth is everybody does have access.
What do you know, or did you know anyone when you were growing up that was very religious, and I'm sure their response to you was one of negativity, right? Or one that wasn't very open to this kind of stuff?
Well, it's interesting. My family is Irish Catholic, and so I was raised with that loosely. However, my mother had been a little bit disenfranchised from the religion, and so, we were the sort of Easter and Christmas Catholic goers. It was there, but it wasn't really strong. So I grew up, understanding and being exposed to the Bible, but not really closely. And so thankfully, my family, though it is Catholic, is fairly open-minded. And one thing I will say about Catholicism is there is a lot of discussion in the religion about angels. So at least it was not an unfamiliar concept to me. I was actually quite surprised personally for myself that when I sort of came out of the psychic closet, so to speak, that people were actually very supportive, including my family.
So you guys were already the black sheep, weren't you? So that was good.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like my mother went to Catholic school and everything growing up, but my sister and I were not baptized. Like she already was, had some issues with some things in the religion, and so thankfully, in a way, I think that was helpful for me.
It's funny because with our show and what we're doing here at Extreme Health Radio is giving people options and giving people tools. Some people may be open to certain things and some people may not be open to certain things, but it's just interesting when the further you go down the path of becoming healthy and becoming clean and following that path as far as it'll go, you find different little rabbit trails that you can go down. And one of the rabbit trails could be something like this for people. But it's just interesting that a huge part of health is our emotional, spiritual, stress, negativity, all these things. I'm learning that these things are the actual cause of disease.
Absolutely. Everything starts energetically and then it manifests in the physical. And that's why I think so much of Western medicine is failing people, because you're really treating the symptom and not the problem. And it is like the eternal Band-Aid, if you just can't get down to the root of the problem, obviously it's going to continue to manifest. And so I'm not saying to not use Western medicine, but I think using it alone is just, it's only addressing part of the issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a lot like, a mechanic that just doesn't have all the tools he needs to fix the car. I mean, there's so many things out there in Western science, Western medicine, although great. They could do some amazing things, like patch people back together. We know a friend right now who just got a lung transplant, complete lung transplant on both sides, and you're not going to do that with herbs. Right.
Exactly. And if you're in a car accident, by all means, please go to a Western doctor. So each area has its specialty, but there are certainly many times with clients personally where I know that the Western medicine has failed them. And one example is when someone's getting a spiritual or psychic attack. I've had numerous clients where they've come to me because they have extreme headaches, very painful, sometimes so debilitating they have a hard time getting out of bed. They've gotten MRIs. There's nothing medically wrong with them. And then they come to me kind of as a last resort, and I'm like, well, you have this thing on your head. Would you like me to remove, Wow. And then I do, and then the headache immediately goes away. And of course, most times they're just completely shocked and incredulous about it. But yeah, there's lots of different tools out there, and I think it's important to be open to different approaches, and then I feel like, use whatever works for you.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a saying a long time ago saying how, the only disease is really just a closed mind.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Are a lot of your clients, are they coming to you for health reasons, or are a lot of people coming for all kinds of different reasons?
It's really all kinds of different reasons, and a typical client will actually come to me for multiple reasons, although there are a few cases where it's just like one thing in particular. But, my specialty is clearing dark energy and energy blocks in people and helping people shift their life. So, people can want to shift their life for a variety of reasons, including health, problems in relationships, feeling stuck financially or in their career. So all of those things are pretty typical for me to look at.
Do you work with people in their homes? Like, have you ever been to someone's home and you find it to be negative, or there's bad spirits or just bad energy there?
Well, yeah, that's actually one of the things I do is I get hired to do space clearing, so either at homes or businesses. So yeah, that happens a lot. In fact, that's often why they're bringing me in. Wow. And I do also sometimes see clients at their home, but I always check in advance. Let's say if I'm there to do reading versus a clearing, I check in advance and see if the space is conducive for me to do that. Because I have, when I was early on in my work and before I kind of learned to check in on this kind of stuff, I would, go and try to doing reading, and I couldn't because there were too many ghosts or negative energies there for me to focus on that. I had to, focus on them instead.
So what do you mean you would check before you would even go to their location?
Yeah, so it's totally possible to, do kind of remote viewing or psychically tune into a place or a person without being there. I mean, I actually do most of my readings right now over the phone or Skype because I have clients all over the world and I travel a lot. So yeah, I don't have to physically be there to pick up on what's going on. All I have to do is just kind of psychically look.
Wow.
Does do any people have issues? Do you touch at all when you go to a person's place on the feng shui of their apartment or their house?
Well, I know a little bit about feng shui. I think there can be a lot to it. That I'm not trained in feng shui, but I will say a lot of feng shui stuff really has to do with energy flow, and I'm certainly looking at that. So generally, where there are problems in a place, it's often because there's some kind of blocked energy. So just very much like what we're talking about in the human body, the same thing happens in a physical space. If you have an energy blockage in a meridian, if you're talking about it from like a acupuncture perspective, then it will manifest in a physical illness. Well, the same thing it happens in a space. If there's not energy flow, then there becomes stagnation, and then there will be problems. So I am looking very much at that. Places that are closed off, where there's not a lot of airflow, for example, closets or attics, they will be more likely to sort of acquire some dark energies and then dark beings. So it's funny, and I always feel a lot of compassion for little kids that are scared of things under the bed or in the closet, because oftentimes there are things there.
Man.
What's interesting about the place where we live, and I guess it was, this would hold true for anyone really, but I often think about, this actual piece of land that we live on. And I think what happened, on this land 500 years ago, 300 years ago, 1,000 years ago, were there wars that were people being killed, or were there events that took place not just within our country's existence, but 1,000 years ago? What actually happened on the land that you're living on? And I have to think that if there were some bad things that happened, that could somehow tie into the actual location of where you are even today.
Oh, absolutely. This is a huge issue. In fact, I saw a really funny cartoon on Facebook a while ago where it said, God, there's so many problems we're having here in the United States. It's almost like we built our country on thousands of native burial grounds. I was just laughed because I was like, yup, pretty much. That. So there's, that issue as well as what you're talking about, places where there's been battle or human trauma. There's a lot going on, and very much like we're talking about Western medicine, kind of not looking at the energy. The same thing happens from a building perspective. And by the way, I was, my master's degree is in political science. I was a planning commissioner. I'm very familiar with the sort of building processes in our country. Uh-huh. And, it's not like anyone goes in and is like, wow, is this energetically an appropriate place to build this house? Yes, no. No, of course, you just, people just get their building permits and they start to build.
Right.
And, it's like moving into a very energetically unclean environment. It's not advisable, and then you're going to have problems, and it is serious because people can get sick, people can die, it can cause dissension in relationships or financial problems. So it is not just a sort of woo-woo issue. Like places that have deep energy problems can create major issues for the physical occupants.
I was thinking about what you were just saying, and I was thinking about people that are going to go look for a house, because Kate and I have been doing a lot of this sort of EMF work lately and looking into magnetic frequencies and things like that, smart meters and all these things, and telephone wires that are connected to the tops of houses. And we're just thinking, okay, for an issue like that, we could go to a new house or a new apartment and you could walk around with one of those things, although people would think you're probably crazy, but you could walk around with one of those things and you could measure the actual frequencies, and if something is bad or unhealthy in terms of that. How can people do what you're doing in a way where if they're doing a walkthrough of a house or an apartment and they want to go live somewhere, how are they going to know if it's got good energy?
Well, I think there's a couple things. First of all, I do remote work, so you can always ask me to check in on a place after you've been, or even before you go, if you're thinking of checking it out, or even multiple places. Like I can look at multiple places really quickly.
Interesting.
Wow. But in terms of, an individual, I think it's important to know we all have access to paying attention to energy. So when you're in a place, pay attention to the physical cues in your body. Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel heavy? Do you feel uptight? All these things are information that most people just dismiss. Mm-hmm. So, nothing is a coincidence or an accident. And, keep in mind, let's say there's a person there with you, you could be picking up on stuff from them. However, if you go to several places and those feelings change, then, maybe it's not as likely to be the person that you're being shown the place by, and more likely to be the place itself. Mm-hmm. Everybody has access to these psychic tools. Of course, some people's gifts are stronger. Not everyone's going to see a ghost or have a completely empathic response that I do, but everyone has something.
Yeah, I have to say, the more empathic I am completely empathic, I've learned as I've gotten older. But like when we moved into this apartment we're in now, in the first couple months, there were some strange happenings that I didn't pick up on when we checked the place out. And so, just bizarre stuff going on. So I actually energy cleared the whole place, and it was just gone like that. And I felt this new confidence restored to me, that it's like I took my power back and I reclaimed this territory for us, because I wasn't about to be scared out of my mind. But it was kind of a huge awakening to realize that we have this power within us if we know how to utilize it.
You had your sage, remember that?
Oh, I saged. I mean, this is stuff that I wasn't never open to, and even throughout the years with people in my life that I was close to that passed away, I'd, be smelling smoke and things where I thought, this is so interesting. The more you tune into some kind of a gift you have. I mean, I don't think I have a gift as strong as you do, but even just on a small level, to really kind of take the reins and know that the power stands in our corner, it's really empowering. We don't have to be so afraid.
Yes. I think, removing the fear takes away the power of those things against us. And, it's funny because I go into situations which would terrify most people.
I bet.
I'm literally going to like demon-infested places or, people with demon attachments and dealing with them. And it doesn't bother me at all now because I have the tools. I don't have fear because it's like I know how to handle it when it arises, and I also know how to protect myself, and I know my own power. So that's the main tool that the dark uses against us is the deceit that we are powerless against them.
Have you ever seen someone demon possessed and all that?
Yes. So I don't do exorcisms because that is, what a Catholic priest does, but I have had possession and a lot of attachment cases. Now, full-on possession is actually very rare. That's when there's, a demon or a spirit or something that's fully taking control of a person's body. That doesn't happen very often. But what is more common is what I call an attachment situation, where you have one of these beings sort of attached to a person and influencing them in more or less degrees. And that happens all the time.
How do you think someone gets possessed by a demon? That's not just bizarre.
Well, it doesn't happen very often, and it happens when there's some kind of opening in the person that is allowing it in. So in a lot of cases, that person has been doing something dark, maybe messing with the occult in an unresponsible way, or they might even just believe that they're very weak and powerless. And that's a big belief right there that allows, another being. And if you don't believe you have control over your body, if you don't feel you're weak, then wow, that's almost like an invitation for something to come in.
When you are,
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, when you are walking around and you have sort of this ability to tune in, and you talk about how we all have that ability, certain people, like you said earlier, are going to be more apt to be, just to be able to tune into their own abilities. But in terms of things people can do to increase their ability to be, I guess, able to be open to the stuff and to feel this kind of energy, what are things people can do to do that?
Wow, there's so many. The first thing is just inviting the angels in to start communicating with you, because, I mentioned that the concept of our lives being like a garden. If you imagine getting a patch of land, automatically it'll have weeds. The weeds just show up. You don't have to plant them. You don't have to invite them in. You don't have to water them. They're just there. So these dark energies are just kind of there. The angels are like the flowers. You have to invite them in. And the reason is they honor our free will. They want us to be able to choose, and that we have the right to choose whatever we want, be it the light or the dark. So it's really not until we extend that invitation to them that they're kind of allowed in our garden, in our lives. And so as soon as we do that, things can shift. And then it's also important to remember that because we have free will, we can change our minds. So we, invite them in today, invite them in tomorrow, invite them in every day, basically, because it's almost like each day is a new day, and we need to continue that invitation. So that's the first thing. I'd also just encourage everybody to start learning and paying attention to their own body cues, just like we talked about in a space. Pay attention to impressions they get. Pay attention to what they see in their mind's eye, their imagination, because that's a lot of times psychic impressions, and people are just dismissing it away as something that they're thinking. But really, the spiritual world is a telepathic world. So whatever we're thinking is highly influenced by what's around us, including, live people, energy beings, like ghosts and angels.
So you're saying they are influenced by what's around us?
No, we are influenced by what's around them. So the spiritual world is telepathic. You don't need to physically talk. So everything is being communicated through thoughts and feelings. So, I know this is kind of a strange thought for most people, but your thoughts are not just your thoughts. I would say typically 80% of your thought is coming from another source.
Yeah, well, we've talked about on the show how, most of our body is not even our physical DNA. Most of our body's bacteria and things like that. So our physical makeup is not even us. And so maybe our thoughts are coming from, the Akashic records or some other source, right?
Right, exactly. So, and by the way, I highly recommend reading my first book about angels, How to Understand, Recognize, and Receive Their Guidance, because I go in depth in that book in how, angels communicate with us and how we can understand their communications, as well as, how some other dark things work, just to give people context. But yes, we're constantly receiving information from our angels and spirit guides, from our higher self, from dark beings. So, this idea of like an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other is really very true, actually. There's this constant barrage of communication coming at us. And I think it's very important to learn how to protect that communication so that you're only basically having conversations with light sources, through your thoughts.
How do you know when you kind of... I'm sure you've seen clients and people and friends in your life that once they've kind of decided to protect that headspace a little bit more, do you see their whole lives change? Obviously physical ailments probably either go away or regress, or, have you seen, what's some of the craziest thing you've ever seen with people who do the work?
Oh gosh, complete transformations. I have a lot of long-time clients where it's just incredible to see, what's transformed in their lives. People leaving bad marriages, getting better jobs, their finances healing, being happy. I've had some clients that were, suicidal or borderline suicidal that are completely happy, living a completely different life. And so, yes, it's incredible.
It runs the whole gamut.
Yeah. Clients that, I had one client who had a really stalker, ex-boyfriend and was, overweight and had health problems. And in a year, all of that shifted.
No way. I don't know why we're so surprised like that. When I say no way, it's like I totally believe it, but I think it's
so amazing.
It is amazing and it's real, but I feel like people just are continually shocked, surprised, or just in total disbelief about this stuff. But we are spiritual beings. I don't know why this is so shocking to people.
I think it's maybe because we live in such a sort of right brain, logical world that's everything full of structure, right? It's just bizarre like that.
Yeah, it is. It's we're really taught to be in the physical world. We're not taught to be in the spiritual sort of energy world. One example I give all the time is, we are very taught to have physical boundaries and understand the physical, to take a shower and clean yourself physically, to have a house and a door and a lock on the door, and but people are just wide open energetically, and they don't know how to clear themselves, and that definitely has a physical impact.
Yeah, I had a question earlier when we were talking about not maybe full on being taken over by a demon or an evil entity, but these more attachments to people. Is there a way for someone to remain unattached or to not become a Velcro for these situations after a clearing, or is it something that we're just going to be battling our whole lives no matter what kind of spiritual path we're on, that things are just going to attach themselves?
Sure. No, this is a very important point because there are people who have attachment situations that I will not work with that want to hire me because I tune in and I'm like, wow, they are not ready to shift their energy. So it's basically kind of not effective and maybe even dangerous for me.
Oh, wow.
So it's very important that if you're wanting to shift, that you change whatever it is that allowed for that being to come in the first place. So, as I mentioned earlier in the call, when something is attaching, or, we have the possession situation, it's because there's something in us that is allowing for it to attach. And unless you shift that, then you're going to continue to sort of get sick in this way. So, the example I give in terms of a physical analogy is, if you're, let's say you get an infection and you take antibiotics, well, unless you heal your body so that you're stronger and deal with, what was allowing you to get weak enough to get sick, you're just going to have to keep taking antibiotics, and you're not really dealing with the real problem,
right,
which is that you have something wrong in your body and you're weak. And this is a very real thing for me because growing up, I was a very sick person. I almost developed chronic bronchitis. I at one period in time had a bacterial infection, and I took antibiotics and took them again and again and again, and finally they said, we can't give you any more because we're destroying your body, basically.
Oh my gosh.
So,
wow.
But this was, while they knew not to give me any more antibiotics, what really wasn't being addressed was why am I getting sick in the first place? And so this is the same thing with attachments. If you have an attachment or you're struggling with a lot of darkness in your life, then you really need to address like what opening in me is allowing for that to occur.
Have you ever had people that, your clients that don't know necessarily what it is about them that could be, it's one thing if you have a client and they're just unwilling to stop doing the things that are causing them all this pain and you're trying to work with them and finally you say, I can't work with you anymore because you're just continually banging your head against the wall. I can't keep helping you. But, with diet and with health, a lot of times people don't know what it is that's causing them pain. Have you ever had people where it's just challenging to figure out why they keep having these same issues?
No, I mean, psychically, I can usually see the issue more likely is whether they are willing to make those changes. So, okay. I mean, we all know a person who goes to the doctor and they get the advice and then they don't do anything different. I mean, It's kind of like that. So, it's usually pretty easy for me to psychically look in and see what's going on. It's just a matter of whether that individual is ready to and wants to make that change. There's a lot of people who, though on the physical kind of surface level, don't want what they have, actually do on a deeper level. It's many of these things are almost like an addiction, an addiction to pain, an addiction to drama, an addiction to struggle. Those things are very real.
Go ahead.
When you kind of get these readings or psychic evaluations of people, are you actually physically seeing things, or have you just tapped in so much to an internal feeling with something going on with someone that it's not like you're getting a flash of a picture of their life more than you're sensing it?
It comes in a lot of different ways for me. So I am profoundly clairvoyant, so I see a lot. I'm also clairaudient, which means hearing. I'm claircognizant, which means knowing, and then I'm super empathic. So during a reading, or just even in my life, I'm getting information via all those senses, like all the time.
Wow.
As I've developed my gift and gotten better at it, one of the things that's been interesting is I don't have to rely on my clairvoyance as much as I used to. Like, I used to really feel like I needed to be shown, and now it's easier for me to just kind of get the impressions quickly. So it's funny because as I've gotten better, my prices have increased, but the truth is, like, I could do in 15 minutes now, I can get more information that it used to take me an hour to get, because, like, I get the information, I trust it, it just comes in really fast.
Oh my gosh.
Being so empathic like you are, how do you protect yourself? It's pretty easy, I felt, for us to protect ourselves from, negativity in the news and things like that. But when you are exposed to family members, friends of friends, or people, acquaintances that you are close to, and they're coming down with diseases, and, you really feel sad for them, how do you protect yourself from not going down that so you're not necessarily sort of inviting that same sort of energy into your body, into your life?
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to share with people on that topic is the importance of understanding that by feeling badly yourself, you are not helping somebody else. So this kind of empathic response really has to do with learning how to have energy boundaries and learning how to allow only the positive energy in, because when you have this gift, you either suffer or you learn how to stop it from happening.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that being an empath is bad. No, it's a very powerful gift, but it's like choosing what you allow in. And when a person is taking in a lot of energy from others, there's usually an underlying belief there that that they need to help others, that they need to suffer with others. And if you are trying to help somebody who's in a pit, and in trying to help them out, you fall in and you're both in the pit, neither person is helped. Like, this is and this is the kind of thing that's happening in our society all the time. Like, we're in a very self-sacrificial society, and I'm here as a messenger of the light to help people understand that is not light. And the reason that's not light is because the light is all about the win-win. The light is, that I can be good and you can be good. The dark is the one that says one person's good, the other person suffers, that there's a winner and a loser, right? So the light principles, everyone can be good. And so if you are feeling badly and sort of sacrificing yourself, then that's dark because you're not caring for yourself. That's not loving to yourself. Mm-hmm. You're putting other person's needs, another person as being more important than you, and that's not true. Everybody's important. Everyone deserves to be in light and love.
It's funny because it sounds like what you're talking about is protecting your boundaries and having a foundation, an emotional and spiritual foundation upon which your own life stands, and right. Outside circumstances isn't going to affect that. And it's funny because we talk to someone, anyone in our lives, like our family, our friends, and we talk to them, and we're having a good day. We're things are going well for us, and then we talk to them, and it's just like wah wah wah. Everything right. is just bad, and it's horrible. And it's important for us to have that solid foundation yourself, so that it doesn't affect you as much, right?
Right. I think there's as an empath especially, there's two things that are important in terms of handling that. One is paying attention to what you expose yourself to. Now, everybody has a bad day, so this is not about you can't be around people that are, ever in, having a bad day or in struggle. I'm talking about people and places where there's just sort of chronically problems,
right, right.
So eliminating those sources for that kind of energy in your life is the first important thing for empaths or for people in general. The second one is learning how to have better energy boundaries and how to clear it out when it does come up. So if you can manage those two things, then you will be a lot less impacted than if you're just kind of open and not learning how to do that.
Darn, so we can't eliminate family members from the earth. Just kidding.
I'm totally kidding. No. It happens very often that I get guidance from a person's spirit guides that, actually cutting off contact from family is sometimes the thing to do. And I found that we learn lessons in various degrees first. Like we first learn a lesson in regards to strangers, and then with friends, and then family is the sort of the last frontier in terms of that lesson. So it's hardest because we have a lot of ideas about family and how to treat family. Yeah. So if you've been abused by a stranger, that's a lot easier to be like, okay, well, I'm going to cut you out of my life. But what if it's your parent or
right.
A spouse, someone that's very close to you? It becomes a lot harder, and so that's we deal with things in our family as kind of the last way we're learning that lesson.
Yeah, and probably one of the most powerful things, too, because like we talk about on the show all the time, how food is such a powerful spiritual tool. And Kate, you and I were just talking about this. People don't see food as spiritual at all, or the lack thereof during a fast. And, it's funny that these things that are in our lives that are constant, like you cannot, unless you're a breatharian or something like that, you have to eat. And right. You have to eat every day, and you can't avoid these things. And most of the time, people try to solve the whole family situation by just, moving across the country or some other place in the world to get away, to just get away from them. But because they're the sort of the constant people in our lives on a consistent basis, it seems like oftentimes they're the most powerful lessons come from them.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize that if you don't resolve that pattern, it's just going to manifest in a different way in your life. So you can't sort of escape yourself in that way. Yeah. Now, if you're in a toxic family situation, sometimes that is the best thing to get out of it. I'm not saying not to do that, but you also have to address whatever it is that's allowing for that to manifest in your life, or it will continue to repeat. So that's really, really important for people to understand.
So you said, what was it? Energetic, or having energetic boundaries. And what was the other thing that you were talking about in order to protect yourself from negative people?
Oh, well, just, what you allow in with the environments and the people you expose yourself to. So, as I've gotten more sensitive and aware, I actually am very much more cautious about where I go and who I connect with. So these physical boundaries actually relate to the energetic spiritual boundaries as well. I'm a very open, loving, and positive person, but in the past, sometimes what that's meant is I've drawn to me a lot of people that are needing a lot of healing, that are really in a lot of struggle. And over time I've said, you know what, I can have compassion, I can totally love and appreciate you as a person, but I don't need that energy in my life personally.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that makes sense.
Amber in our chat room is asking about magnesium salt baths, and we've had a guest talk about that. Who was pranic healing? Who was?
Oh, Bill Hankey.
Bill Hankey does this kind of work called pranic healing, and he does a lot of work with like salts and things. And are magnesium salt baths, are they a good way to clear energy, do you think?
Yeah, so I think, salt in general, and magnesium salt is great, is wonderful. Salt, one of the properties of salt is that it sort of absorbs things. So it absorbs, dark energy amongst other things. And it's funny, there's this idea of, how to protect yourself from like demons or ghosts and throw salt over your shoulder, I mean,
Right.
This is a very old idea in our human culture. And yes, it can be very helpful. I do take salt baths myself regularly. And it's also important to note that it's not just the salt, but the water itself is very healing and purifying. So the principles of water are pure light, and it's all about flow. Basically we are water. So when we use both salt and water, it's a very powerful combination.
Yeah, something about salt, isn't it? It's
cleansing.
It's a bizarre thing. You go into the ocean, you jump in the water, and you feel good, and it's just I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I think it's just, I think there's a scientific aspect to it where it attracts the negative ions or something like that. But I'm not exactly sure. But I just know that it energetically, spiritually, it really pulls out the darkness, pulls out the negativity.
Yeah, I've heard of that too, because we there's a lot of people talking about the salt lamps. People use those salt lamps and they talk about how they give off negative ions and things and help clear the air. And so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. I have a question for you, too, about physical healing, because a lot of people that listen to our show, are working on a lot of health stuff, as we all are, and trying to get healthier. Is it the kind of thing where if you're quiet and you sit and you reflect and you're listening for information from angels, from God, whoever's going to speak to you, that you're going to, I guess what I'm asking is the biggest step in healing, listening for answers that are going to be coming from outside of us, or is it to tune in so much to like our own voice that we've been squashing down? It's like, is the most powerful information from outside of us or inside of us, or is that like meshed together of what to do next?
Yeah, I think it's a really combination. I mean, yes, our higher self, our deeper personal power, as well as our angels and spirit guides, can really help us. Now, one important note about meditation can be a very powerful tool, but unless you're doing it in a protected way, it can actually make things worse. And that may surprise, people to hear that, but, we're telepathic people. And so if we're creating time and space for communication telepathically, which is what meditation is, basically having our mind open to receive, and we're not protecting the space, we can actually get stronger messages from the dark as well. So if you're meditating, I highly encourage you to ask the angels or beings of light to protect the space. So call on, Archangel Michael is a really great angel in particular, call on Jesus, and ask, or whoever is, higher spiritual being for you, and ask for protection during that time, because otherwise, again, the free will piece, the dark rushes in, and the light waits to be invited in. So if you don't specifically invite the light in, what's just going to automatically show up is the dark. Maybe the light will show up too, but you might be more likely to hear, the dark. And for example, if there's someone yelling in your face, are you going to hear the nice person give you calm, quiet guidance next to them? Probably not.
Yeah, no, totally.
Do you meditate a lot yourself?
I don't really do structured meditation, but I'm constantly sort of meditating in the sense of like having quiet, receiving information. Obviously I'm doing it during readings. And then it's not uncommon for me to even have several hours a day where I'm doing that kind of work. And for me, a lot of times it's more structured, like I'm sort of meditating in the sense of I'm meditating on a past life or meditating on a particular issue and receiving guidance on it. But it's the same general idea. So
you're not really doing it as a structured sit-down thing. Sometimes you might, but it's not that often.
I mean, I will be, sitting or laying down. I actually like to do it laying down because I find I'm less distracted by my body. But yeah, it's not like I, take deep breaths and listen to this music and have this system. I can go pretty deep pretty fast just because of my training.
That's so interesting. Yeah, a lot of people are doing the transcendental meditation. I've never done any of these. Our last guest, Ken Rollo, was talking about this what was it, Vipassana, or how do you say that?
Oh my gosh, is it Vipassana?
Vipassana? I don't even know what it's called. Some sort of meditation, Vipassana or something like that. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people are doing it, and it's it seems to be helping a lot of people connect. Yeah,
no, I think it's wonderful, and I think the important thing is to find the way for yourself to meditate. Like, it works differently for everyone. So yeah, if transcendental meditation works for you, great. But really what we need to receive information and guidance and to feel calm, I think is a quiet mind and the opportunity to listen. So I recommend for a lot of clients what I call sort of a moving meditation. So for a lot of people, literally being still is actually hard for them. So, take a walking meditation. Go for a walk by a beautiful lake or in a beautiful place, and, you may receive information that way. Or, as funny as it may sound, do the dishes.
Yeah.
Vacuum. Something where your mind is like not fully occupied, because you don't really need your full concentration, obviously, to do these things, is often when, you'll get information, or just take a shower. Same thing. Like and then you have the benefits of the water that's also purifying you. So there's a lot of different ways to sort of meditate and receive information, or just sit down and put on some theta music, some calming kind of, nice music. There's so many ways to do it. Or do a writing meditation. Really just do whatever works for you and experiment if you're not sure.
Yeah, it's funny you said that moving meditation, because I'm it's funny with meditation. I go off and on it. I get on a kick and I'll do it for a long time, and then I'll just sort of get too busy for it. But I really like the qigong that we have on our site. Like, I'll do the qigong at like 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening, and there's something about moving while you're sort of breathing and focusing. And I don't know, like I just really like that moving meditation idea.
Yeah. No, it's a very, very powerful. And again, for some people, that the sort of seated, silent meditation can be challenging. So I think if that is hard for you, then find another way to do it. You don't have to just not do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I like the idea of meditation. And so I was going to ask you, when you're going about your daily life and you're going out about driving around, running errands, one of the things that I'm trying to do and be better at is connecting to God and connecting that way as I'm doing my daily sort of chores or things I'm doing around the house or outside. Because so much of the time we get caught up and we're just in the moment of just being in our heads, or we're angry at the guy that pulled in front of us or some crazy thing. And, what are some ways that people can help themselves sort of live with more, I guess, intention, or being more aware and being able to receive during those mundane sort of tasks that we do every day?
Yeah, well, I'd like people to know that we are constantly receiving information and guidance and support. And again, I recommend reading my book about angels, because they really go into how that communication happens. But basically, all the time, we're receiving information. So pay attention to numbers that you see. Pay attention to overheard conversations. Paying attention to your thoughts. Paying attention to songs you hear. All of this has information for you. So, once you learn how that communication happens, you can start to sort of proactively work with it and ask for information. But even before that, you're getting information. So one of my favorite things to do is, ask the angels for some information, then turn on the radio or, my MP3 player, and just see what songs come up and what the messages are. And it can be profoundly specific.
Wow.
Again, pay attention, things that you just kind of overhear. All of these things are information for you. So the truth is that we're never kind of just cut off, or just doing the sort of practical. It's all intermingled.
It's so funny, too, because some things can be so minor. It was so funny. I didn't tell you this, Kate, last night. So I was taking a shower or getting ready to go to bed, and I was listening to a guest of ours, David Wolf, and he was answering questions. And it was so funny because I was getting out of the shower, and I had Q-tips, and I know that you shouldn't really use Q-tips. And I was like, but I just I just felt like I needed to use it, And as I had the Q-tip in my ear, the question came up: are Q-tips, damaging for the inner ear? And it's just like it's one of those things where it's like,
I feel like it's so funny.
Yeah, the more synchronicities you start having, it just shows up more and more and more as long as you're listening for it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And the more you kind of tap into it, the more you can create like a magical life, because you can actually sort of create these synchronicities and request them. And so I live my life in a way that is just, kind of crazy to most people, because I'll, the angels will tell me to go to a place and I'll go and in a way, not necessarily know why I'm there, but then something incredible happens. It's like, oh, of course, it's because I asked for this help, and then this is, where they sent me to make it happen.
It's funny when that becomes such a real thing for people. It's so funny. I have a friend that lives next door to us here, and she's, grew up in a very strong Catholic family and got really turned off to that at a young age, and has been a very spiritual person, but kind of disconnected from a lot of, her past beliefs and things. And the other day they had a couple reptiles, and one of their awesome chameleons, who's like a foot long, got out of his cage. He munched through the mesh and got lost, and her little daughters were freaking out. The whole neighborhood, it was so awesome to see everybody come as a community to look for this Beastie was his name. We're all looking for Beastie, and it's starting to get dark, and the girls are crying. And I mean, it was so neat to see everybody searching high and low. And, they resorted to the fact that Beastie was probably going to be in a safe place for the night, and they weren't going to be able to look anymore because it was getting dark. And this one man stayed on extra long with like a headlamp, looking through shrubs and bushes, and, the chameleons blend right in. And I remember I came home and I said a prayer, and at the same time I was saying a prayer that we'd find Beastie. My friend Teresa next door, the one who owns Beastie, remembered in her, childhood of calling out, I'm not sure, is it Shamuel?
Yes.
For missing objects and things.
Yeah, he's very good at that.
She called out to him at the same time, and then we literally were texting each other like, oh my gosh, like she goes, we just found Beastie. And I go, I was just praying. And she goes, well, I just asked Archangel Shamuel. And it was one of those moments where we both just got goosebumps and we're like, wow. And so the man with the headlamp was literally led right to a place we'd already looked a ton of times, and was able to get him out of the middle of this gigantic bush and just clear a space to get him. And it was just one of those really cool things where I think that, the trust and faith in the system comes back to you when you have situations like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a two parts. One is the asking, and then the believing and receiving.
Right.
And both are important. But most people just don't even ask. So obviously there's really limited in terms of what can happen if you aren't asking.
Right. Don't you think it kind of cuts off your ability to have a magical life, or to see the magic almost? Because when stuff like that happens, it really makes you a believer and like, wow, that's either really big coincidence or there's somebody on my side like guiding me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'd like to just bring up my last book, Angels and Manifesting, is all about this. Like, how do you work with the angels to bring in, things that you want? And it's totally possible. And there's a lot of manifesting books out there, some great books, but I think as soon as you bring in the angels and learn how to, invite them into that process, it becomes that much stronger.
Do you think, I think people have a hard time when they hear that. A lot of people, especially from super religious backgrounds and upbringings, when you hear angels and you hear God, I think a lot of times people kind of get a little weirded out about the angel thing because they think, oh, God is the master of all. But do you think they fit together, and those shouldn't be such a fearful thing for people?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, let me just address, just religions, period, that angels are, outside of religion. And that might surprise people to hear me say it, but, angels they just are, and they're described in all the major world religions. So angels are not Christian, they're described in Islam as well, but they're not, Jewish, they're not any of those religions. They just are there, and all these different cultures and world beliefs all over the world have come to incorporate them and describe them. And they are a part of God and God's system. So to work with an angel is not to be against God or work outside of God, but rather to work in connection with the divine source, a divine being. And the angels, their role really is to work as messengers and helpers. So if you were to give the analogy of kind of, let's say, God is like the president, and I know that I'm not trying to be weird or anything, but just as an analogy, then, most people can't directly call the president up and be like, hey, Obama, can you help me with this thing, right? There's people in place, there's government leaders and officials and all that. So it's that same kind of system. There is a system in place in terms of how to manage all of it.
Right. That makes sense. I think that's really great that you touched on that, because I think that's freeing for a lot of people. They're like a this or that. A lot of people have a hard time wrapping their mind around the both, and it all works together. And I think we get so stuck in our dogmatic views of things that can be hard for people to break through and kind of see the truth in it all.
Yeah, and angels, I mention them a lot because they just are beings of love and light, and they want to help, and they're just so lovely. So, yes, we all have spirit guides, and an angel can be a type of spirit guide, but angels in particular, that is their mission, is to help us here. So I think if we're not using that, it's like going out and not having your tools in your toolkit. It's a great resource. Please use it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that it's important for people to sort of extract themselves out of living in this logical world, living in this kind of weird, structured world. In that same thing I was explaining earlier about David Wolfe, he was talking about how the real world is dreams, synchronicity, and magic. That's the real world.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that's the truth, and it's hard because we're so caught up in this physical reality that sometimes we forget how illusory it is in so many ways, and our spiritual self is so much beyond that. I struggled growing up because I always felt like this is not really me, who I am now. And now I understand, because this is just kind of like a lifetime costume that I'm wearing. This isn't my soul identity. How I appear was chosen for very specific reasons for, what I needed to accomplish in my life. And because it suited the particular needs of this lifetime. But, we as people are not physically who we are today. It is, it's very, very important to understand that. So, you are so much more than that.
Right.
I think that's huge. I think that you touched on something really important for people to remember. And I think
you have to look out for it, right?
You have to look out for it.
Yeah.
But I think that, Laura, you made a really good point too, because when disease and discomfort in the body happens, I think we also have to be careful how much we attach ourselves, like Justin's always talking about, of, the diagnosis being a problem for someone standing in the way. Sometimes we can't get I think that, what do you always say? You say the diagnosis is a secondary...
Yeah.
How do you say that?
It's just a secondary virus. It's a secondary condition in and of itself that stands alone from the actual physical condition, I think. Yeah,
and if you let that, it seems like, penetrate that mind space barrier into a body that you said is like truly a lifetime costume, then I think that it's going to be a lot harder for people to overcome illness in this human body.
Mm-hmm.
I think once you recognize that it's all temporary, then I think it actually becomes easier to shift it, because then you're like, oh, this isn't real in that sense, or it's not permanent. It's not just, it's permeable and changeable.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to understand that all illness manifests from something in us, and in a way that's scary, because then we have to take responsibility for it, but that also means that we're empowered to change it. So it's actually, in my opinion, a very wonderful thing. And personally, I've had some incredible healing. So when I was in that crisis point in my life, I was 50 pounds heavier than I am now. I was on sleeping pills. I was, diagnosed with depression, polycystic ovary syndrome, leaky gut syndrome. I had a lot of health problems. I was constantly sick. As I mentioned, I had pretty much chronic sinus infections. I was on antibiotics all the time.
Yeah.
Just wasn't sleeping. It was a mess. I was a mess. And part of what helped me go into this whole healing process was I was in that crisis point, also in terms of my marriage, in terms of all these things. I was unemployed, and I went through profound and very rapid healing. As soon as I started to shift some of the things in my life that were problematic from an emotional and energetic perspective, a lot of these things just went away. I literally lost 30 pounds in a few months, bam. And so it's important for us when we get a diagnosis not to take it as like a sort of sentence. Like,
yes.
this is what I'm sentenced to. Like, this
yes.
is what I have to have.
Yes,
because it's all changeable, and it can change very, very fast. And we have to remember that our bodies are trying to protect and communicate and tell things to us. So, pain is not bad. Pain is actually very good. Pain tells us when there's something wrong.
Right.
People that don't experience pain, they have a lot of problems because, they'll poke their eye out. They'll do all these things because they don't understand, that it's not, what's bad, that it's, they don't get that physical response.
Yes.
And so I want to let people know that illness in the body is not bad. It's trying to tell you something. It's trying to tell you that something is off. And what we need to do then is figure out, what is it that's off? Is it that I'm eating something that's inappropriate for my body? Am I in a toxic relationship? Am I not doing my soul purpose, and so my body is reacting? All these things are potential possibilities.
Wow. It's like a choose your own adventure, isn't it?
It is. Kind of is, right?
Yeah.
It is, in a cool way.
Often connected. So for me, my sort of physical crisis was a culmination of being emotionally shut off, not learning how to have energy boundaries, and also because I wasn't doing my life mission. So I want people to hear this, because it's very important that if you as a soul are not accomplishing what you came here to do, you can get sick and die, because basically it's like, I need to opt out. There's no, I need to abort my mission.
Wow.
I'm not accomplishing what I came here to do. It's time to start over. Now, the good news is, if you figure out what you came here to do, you can change that. You can stop dying. You can shift it. But I basically had shaman sickness. This is something where when you have a life purpose, a healing purpose, and you're not doing it, it's known thing in indigenous cultures all over the world that you will get very sick if you're not doing what you came here to do.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, we talk about that a lot, finding your real mission, because we focus a lot, obviously, on green powders and supplements and all this kind of cleansing and all this kind of stuff. But man, how important is it to do the kind of work you're supposed to be doing?
Well, it's soul deadening. What's the point, I guess?
Well, exactly. Your soul gets tired and exhausted, and it's like, well, it's time to do over. This mission is not coming out as planned. So yes, I absolutely think, healing and physical, physically what you take into your body through diet is all very important. It's all connected. My diet has changed incredibly since I've done this work, and I've gotten more sensitive. But the most important thing is for people to look at their lives and look at the bigger picture, and are they doing what they came here to do and learn?
Mm-hmm. That might be scary to a lot of people to ask that question, because it's a crapshoot of what's going to come back to you. You don't know what that answer is going to be, and that probably scares a lot of people, the possibility of what they could hear.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's scary, but it can be scary, but what is more scary, that or to get sick and die,
right,
or to just feel like you're lost and sort of wandering in this life?
No, you're right.
I think that, which one is worse. And yes, you may be called on to do things that seem scary, but once you work through it, then everything gets so much better. So personally, I had a lot of literally terror and fear about coming out as psychic and telling people what I saw. And then once I started to get more into the psychic work, I understood it was because I have a lot of persecution fears from past lives in which I've been burned as a witch or tortured by the church, or basically silenced from people in power because I was speaking out and against them or in ways that threatened them. And so this is very real for a lot of people right now that have a mission, but these past life traumas and fears really crop up and become a barrier. And this is where the learning about past lives can be so profoundly helpful, because then you can understand why you have that fear. It's not just this sort of nameless, terrifying thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I get that. And then you can also learn from it and shift. So in my case, what I associated as a soul was, okay, so being visible, being known, that's dangerous. And the truth is that isn't dangerous. It's how it's done. So in a lot of lives, I was doing things that was in a way that wasn't safe, or I was sort of directly sort of attacking those in power. And so there are ways to do it where, you can accomplish your mission, and you can be safe doing it.
Mm-hmm. So how do people find out what it is they're supposed to be doing? $1 million question.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways. Obviously, you can book a reading and find out that way. You can do a meditation journey. But I also recommend for people to just think about what it is that made them excited and kind of feel alive as a child, and then also now. Because, it's funny. I think I knew from a very young age at least part of what I was to do. I remember a friend asking when I was growing up, I think I was about 7, what I wanted to do, and I said I wanted to be an actress, a writer, and a model, and a singer. And he laughed at me. Children know. And I remember being shocked, like, why is he laughing at me? But at the same time, it impacted me. And he wasn't doing it in a mean way. I just think he thought, wow, this, like, audacious little child.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went away from some of that. I did my sort of poli-sci thing. I got my master's in poli-sci, and I worked in higher education. And but then ultimately ended up coming back to it because I realized that is what I'm here to do. And I do all of those things now, also within the psychic framework. But we as a child, we are drawn to certain things, and those things are important. It's important to acknowledge them.
Mm-hmm.
I have been revisiting a lot of those things in my journaling and through reading different books, and just the importance placed on that. And it's kind of a shocker when you really allow yourself to go, yeah, that is what I love. That's who I was. It's who I still am when I was a child. I mean, it's kind of, it kind of makes you laugh because you're like, here I am, like stuff that I thought I had buried or didn't matter. It was just a childhood dream is so who I am at my essence still. It's just shocking.
That's funny. So much of what we have to do in this life is like we have to learn and then we have to unlearn.
I know. It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's really neat. I love that advice for people.
So many times people become so attached to their bodies and to their life and they want to hold on so desperately, but at the same time they haven't figured out what they're supposed to do. And there's this weird attachment thing going on too with people.
Yeah. It's complicated, and I have a lot of compassion because, we're not taught to do this. I mean, we when we're growing up, we learn the alphabet, we learn how to tie our shoes, we learn how to eat. We do all, we're taught how to do all these things, but we don't go through sort of spiritual, psychic, emotional, energetic training, and that's just as important, if not more important, than the physical aspects. And in fact, you can learn the physical, and if you don't learn the emotional aspect, they can really mess you up.
Yeah, I completely see that, unfortunately. I mean, most people in our lives, you look around, and they just seem like a byproduct of that happening their whole lives, and they're not even aware it's going on.
It's interesting you said that a while ago about finding your mission and stuff, because one of the doctors that was on our show was talking about how, in the same way that when you eat, like when people eat bread or food that's actually causing cells to die, the cells in the body actually die. There's a photonic energy transfer. Actually the food that you're eating will kill your cells. And he was making the correlation between people eating poor food that's actually killing off physically cells in their body. And he was saying the same thing happens when people don't do the kind of work they're supposed to be doing, because literally every single day you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, a small part of you dies. And as a result of that, your body needs to compensate for that, and it needs to create candida to come in there. And so you start having all these health issues because you're not doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing. And it's all related to not living your mission.
Yes, it's totally true, and not having an awareness of energy. So I'm glad you brought up like wheat and food, because it's extremely important. And as I developed my psychic gift and got more sensitive and in tune, my diet completely changed, and it was a gradual process. I mean, I didn't come to this overnight, but I have a pretty extreme diet compared to most people, because I have to be very clear in order to channel this kind of energy through me to do the work that I do, to go in the darkness, and I basically need to have like very little openings for darkness in myself. So I don't eat wheat or any grains, so no corn, no soy, no rice. I don't eat any sugar, and for me that even includes sweet fruits.
Wow.
I don't eat dairy. I don't eat eggs. I don't eat pork or shrimp because they're high in toxins. I also don't eat fermented foods, including alcohol.
Interesting.
So, and I also don't eat starchy foods. So I basically lean, healthy meat and unstarchy vegetables.
I was going to say you're a breatharian.
It's getting to where, I've very little that I, eat in terms of sort of the traditional diet. I go to most restaurants or even grocery stores and I can't eat most of what's there. Right. But that is just what my body has gradually shifted towards. And so, if you're struggling with physical illness, it's important to look at it from a spiritual perspective. And, your soul mission and all that kind of stuff. Am I doing what I came here to do? Am I exposing myself to energy that's toxic? And also keep in mind that that's happening in your own body. Like, as an empath, you have to be extra careful with what you eat because you're absorbing energy, not just from outside your body, from in your body even more too. So if you're consuming something that is low vibrational or bad energy, you're getting a lot more of that than a non-empath.
Mm-hmm. I have a question about that because we eat very similar to you, and at times I go through these valleys and peaks of just feeling really upset and sad about eating really high quality grass-fed animal products. And it's just something I struggle with because I feel like my body needs it at times, but then I struggle with the, eating and consuming of something that's given its life. And I don't know if that's just something we have to work through on our own or if you can shed any light on that for people who feel badly when they eat the meat.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of compassion and understanding for that as well. I mean, I was a vegetarian for 5 years, and I basically had to stop because I just got sicker and sicker. I mean, I love animals, obviously love people, and I want everyone to be good, but the truth is that the cycle of life is a very real natural cycle, and it is not evil. Now, I think the way that we handle animals in our society is really poor overall, and so I think that needs to be shifted. But I also want everyone to know plants are alive too. I'm sorry, but just because an animal has emotion in a way that we recognize doesn't mean that a plant is not also alive and feeling.
Right.
So not to freak people out, but that you're basically, in order to stay alive, you need to consume other live sources of energy.
Yeah.
And I have a different perspective than most people about, crossing over and dying, because the other side is a lovely place. So I don't feel like, going to the other side is a bad thing. Now, the way that it's done is often very terrible. So our slaughterhouses and the way that animals are raised, I think, leaves a lot to be desired. But no, I don't think it's like bad or evil to consume what it is that we need to stay alive. I mean, do you think a tiger is evil? I mean, they're just doing what they need to stay alive. And we have to understand that above all, we also are animals. We are in this system. We are not above that.
Yeah.
And if people want to...
I resonate with that, yeah.
Yeah, if people want to learn more about the plants being alive in terms of having a sentient being, I'd encourage people to read a book called Secret Life of the Plants, and also a documentary called What Plants Talk About, and we'll put a link to that on this show page, episode 412. Amazing. Have you seen that documentary?
No, I haven't. I definitely need to check it out, because this is just something I get, kind of psychically. But no,
it's amazing. It goes into how plants, people think plants can't communicate with each other, but they're actively working together in different environments to ward off pests, and they're protecting each other, and they're talking to each other in terms of warning themselves or warning other plants of impending danger. It's just amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah, no, I believe that. I mean, and I will have communications with plants. I mean, trees are wonderful beings to communicate with. They have so much to offer. So yeah, it's important to honor the life that's all around us in all forms. Insects too. I mean, insects are alive and conscious. But at the same time, understand that we can't take on the burden or the pain or the stress or of everyone, everything. We have to live consciously and be aware. But yes, the cycle of life is real and it is not evil.
That's really good to hear, because I think sometimes empaths like us get hung up on those things when we know that our body needs certain things, but our mind is like fighting us, it's just hard to get out of our own way and trust that is part of the cycle.
For me personally, this is something that's been very real for me, because I actually feel the best when I eat red meat, and I actually eat red meat twice a day, which is a lot compared to most people, I think. But that's just, if I don't eat it, I will get sick. So it's important to listen to your body and what your body is telling you, and know that what your body is needing is not bad or evil.
That is so good for people to hear. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of judgment around food, and sometimes your body needs certain foods and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes we have seasons in life where, you require red meat and seasons where you don't, and I think it's important. I think what it really comes down to is sort of what you were talking about before, is people, all of us, need to be able to listen. Like you were just talking about how you need red meat, and certain people need certain foods, and I think we get caught up in these dietary dogmas that this and that, and this is always the way it is. And, if you're going through a particularly 6-month stress of your life, you may need to eat more fat, or you may need to eat something else. And then after that, your body doesn't need it. But I think it boils down to what you are just so good at, is just listening to your body and being aware and listening.
Yeah, and honoring that everyone's body, everyone's situation is different. So I really don't like this prescriptive, this is what you're supposed to eat. Like, if I eat too much fish, I don't feel good. For some people, fish is great. So it's really important to just pay attention to what works for you, and also know that can shift and change. So yes, what you need at one point in your life may be different than what you need at a different point in your life. And just to honor that.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your time and part of your day in New York City. I appreciate it today.
Yeah,
you're so welcome. It's been very powerful. Thank you for providing this wonderful opportunity. I can tell you guys share a lot of wonderful information for people.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks,
you're
Laura.
Welcome. And so, people want to find out more about you. We didn't mention you've written 4 books. We did mention those, and they can find all of those on healingpowers.net. Is that right?
Yes, all that's there. It's linked there. You can also find those on Amazon if you just search Laura Powers. You can find my author page. Yeah, so people can connect with me through my website. You can send me an email, lauramichellepowers@gmail.com. That's also linked on my website. I have a lot of free stuff out there, videos. I have my own podcast, which is also linked on my website. And I also want to mention I'm teaching a class coming up in February. That's a phone class, so you can do it from anywhere, on doing past life reviews and readings as a way to create shifting and healing in your life. So I'm really excited about that, because it's something that I've really used to help change my life quickly, and it's a really wonderful resource.
So this would be a past life, like teaching people how to do a past life review on themselves?
We're both going to learn how to do it for other people, so how to look at another person's past lives as well as your own.
Wow.
It's because, basically what we're doing here is we're learning how to take in certain sort of spiritual lessons. And that happens through life and experience. But if we can review a past life and learn the lesson and integrate it, then we don't necessarily have to keep having the experience to learn it. Mm-hmm. So basically you can start to shift and develop kind of on fast forward. So let's say you're trying to learn how to have healthier energy boundaries and not take abusive relationships. Then you can look at, let's say, someone that's kind of triggering you, and you can look at your past lives with them, and you can understand. So on a deeper level. So let's say in the past, maybe this person killed you, and now you just have maybe a tough relationship with a person, and you can understand, okay, I'm learning how to have better energy boundaries, how to not accept unacceptable behavior, and you can make better choices more quickly and easily, understanding all the background.
That's interesting. So it gives you some real perspective on why certain things are happening in your life. I like that.
Exactly.
So how exactly can people sign up for that?
So that's linked on my website, on the services page of my website. So the website is healingpowers.net. And I'd love to connect with people. Sign up for my newsletter. You can hear about regular things that's also available on my website.
Awesome. How often do you do your podcast?
It's really variable for me because it's one of those things just when I kind of have extra time or, and I've been really on a writing kick for the last few months, so haven't been as active, but usually do several times a year, and when I have the time, I do it at least once a month. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, but I have like 5 years of podcasts on there.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah, I saw the other day you had the guy from Thrive. What was his name?
Oh, yeah, Foster Gamble. He's amazing. So, yeah, if you haven't seen the movie, I highly recommend it, the movie Thrive by Foster Gamble. And I was able to interview him on my video podcast.
That was awesome. Nice. Yeah, I saw that. So cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're up to some cool stuff. So if people can, if they want, they can contact you for consultation as well?
Yeah. Contact me via phone or via email. My phone number, just so you know, does not accept texts, so you do have to call the number. Okay. But if you prefer to, do a text and just send me an email, I'm really good with that. I do readings as short as 15 minutes, and then any way up to an hour.
Awesome.
Great. Yeah, I see this here on the site. Wow, what are you not doing?
I know. I was reading your bio, and you have quite the extensive bio. It's awesome. There's so many different things you do.
Thank you. Well, I think this is another sort of fallacy that we're taught, that we have to choose one thing, or we just are one thing. And the truth is, we're like master creators, and we don't need to be limited. And the more we honor our different gifts, then the more we can have as well.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. All right. Well, hang on the line there, Laura. We're going to close out the live show. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us here on the live show. We really appreciate it. It's always a lot of fun when you guys are joining us in the chat room, and very, very energetic. And I'm trying to be better myself in the chat room, because it's challenging to do a chat and also to ask good questions.
I know.
But
it's like my brain checks out half the time.
I do my best. I did better today.
I'm trying to.
Amber Marie and C-Biz and Ann Louise and everybody else, we appreciate you guys listening so much. And stay tuned to our show next Friday. We'll have another show available as well, and got lots of great stuff going on. So thank you all for joining us, and really, really appreciate it so much. And if you could do us all a favor, Laura, Kate, and myself, if you we would all appreciate it if you would share this show with your friends. We would really appreciate it if you feel comfortable doing that. That is extremehealthradio.com/412.
Because you never know who needs to hear it at the time that they are just waiting for a word. So
that's true.
Yep.
That's true.
You never know.
You never know who's going to hear it. So we appreciate all of you guys, and thank you for your support, and thank you for visiting our store and supporting Laura and supporting us, and we really appreciate that. We couldn't do the show without you. So thank you all so much. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. All right, there you go, Laura Powers. Fun show, huh?
Gosh.
Some interesting people.
Aren't there some interesting gifts people have? I mean, I don't know. I mean, whether or not people believe in what she's saying or any of that, it's incredible when you meet somebody, talk with someone, or see somebody that seems to have an amazing gift, because that's what it seems like. It doesn't seem like a lot of people could cultivate such you could practice. I mean, I guess you can practice silence and receiving information, because I think we're all a conduit to that. But certain people that have certain gifts, it's kind of incredible to just talk with them, no matter what you think about them. It's just it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, it's one of the things that we like to do on our show. Is obviously when you have a show about health, it's going to be a lot of the physical, and there's a lot of that in the world today, and there should be, because obviously what we eat and things like that obviously determine our health, but. It's my contention that the spiritual and the emotional is really where the diseases happen, and where they get stuck and blocked energy and all that stuff. And so, I think that people should be more open to living in that sort of dream synchronicity and magic. Yeah. Because we were talking last night, you live in that world. I do live in that world. You live in that crazy world, man. It is a crazy world. It's a super exciting but crazy world. I feel like it's probably something I always had. The ability as a child to kind of tap into, but I didn't until recent years. And I go, whoa. To me, it makes God so big. No matter how things work. I don't know if anybody really knows how it all works, but yeah, I walk out the door every day going, what kind of magic awaits me today? What is God trying to communicate with me? And I expect to see stuff, and sure enough, it finds me. Yeah, it's like that plaque at Dr. Bergman's office, Expect Miracles. Yeah, it's like that, right? I mean, if you look for it, I think you start seeing it more. Yeah, I think so too. It becomes a very crazy way of living. Sometimes you feel just insane. You know, like she was saying, you feel like you're going a little nutty, a little batty, in your own mind, because you're like, is this really how things work? Is this really happening this way?
Right.
But when it keeps occurring and reoccurring for years on end, then you go, okay, I really can't ignore this coincidence, if you want to call it, you know, like it just seems way more structured, and it seems like God will communicate with people who are asking and who are listening for a response. Because
whenever you leave the house, I mean, it's always like you come back 2 hours later and you have a story.
Always.
You have some story of someone you met, or someone that talked to you, or someone that came up to you, a stranger that
bought me supplements in a store, or felt like they needed to give me this, or a word on the ground, a fortune cookie waiting right there when I asked for a word. I mean, it's there for the taking. It's there for the asking. I feel like that's the big thing, is to start asking. I'm reading a book right now by Mary O'Malley that our massage therapist, Shay, loaned to us. It's a great book. It's called What's in the Way is the Way. And my gosh, it just seems to be so true. It's like, she talks about many great subjects in there, but one I read the other night while taking a salt bath, out of all things, was about just the power of asking questions and releasing them. Again, I get this message over and over. It's not necessarily about finding answers. It's learning how to ask the right questions.
Right.
And when you can ask that and just release it, it's amazing what kind of stuff comes back to you rather quickly and rather swiftly.
When you start asking questions about...
And let it go.
So what were some of the exercises in her book?
I don't know if they're exercises as much as she's just breaking down the value of asking questions, why it's so important, instead of looking for answers all the time. That frustrates people. But when you ask a question with an open mind and you're able to just let it float out there and go, oh, like it's going to come back to me at the right time, it's so freeing. You will. It's almost like... It doesn't make any sense, but doing the opposite often doesn't make sense, but it's where the answers are. Like once you let go of something, you know, it's like you think and you think and you think and you think, I'm going to think myself out of this situation, or come to a realistic answer or whatever, but that just doesn't seem to work for people, and we get frustrated, and it becomes this obstacle that's in the way. And so she talks in her book about making that obstacle through, like going through it is the way, not shoving it away, you know?
Not pushing it off to the side.
Right. So questions sometimes that don't have answers, they can become an obstacle. So why don't you just let the question become a bridge?
Ah, okay.
To put in my own. I mean, that's what I'm getting out of it so far.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating stuff. But yeah, I get excited every day when I walk out of the house, go, what's waiting for me today? Like,
I know.
What's God going to teach me? What's God going to show me? Like,
you have the funniest, man. Every time you leave the house, I just know that you're going to have some story when you come back, and you always do.
Well, yeah. I'm kind of living in expectation of that every day, because I had a few weeks there where I'd be like, oh, the magic's gone. My miraculous way of living doesn't seem to be here. And then I have to go internally and ask, what am I doing different? Am I in a different headspace? Am I overcome with fear and worry instead of trust and favor? You know?
You think you were? During those, how long was it? 2 weeks?
I've had a couple different times where there's a couple weeks to a month where it seems like all magic stops.
And during those
this
times,
miraculous way of living just seems to dry up, and I think, oh, it's no more. There's no more left for me. You know?
Do you think during those times you're more fearful? It could be, huh?
I don't know. I wouldn't say so, but I might be so preoccupied in my head, even just I'm too busy.
Yeah.
That I think, oh, this was so easy. I was in the flow and the sync of this communication, and then it's almost like you take it for granted, and you think, oh, well, I'm just not going to expect it anymore, and it'll just keep coming to me. And I think when you get kind of, what's that word I'm looking for? Like you become complacent.
Oh, complacent, yeah.
In that's what I think I needed to pay attention to. It's like, don't become complacent, and don't become not grateful and amazed at every single thing that happens. Don't ever take it for granted, and always be open to appreciating it coming to you, because it is a gift. Like, I don't know many people who live in my best friend Robin. She lives like that. Like that's why when she and I get together, it's just so funny, because you just never know what's going to happen. It's drawing situations and people and places in that you never, when you woke up that morning, you weren't thinking that was going to happen that day.
Yeah, I know. Whenever you get together with her, it's like magic, sparks, and it's like all of a sudden you have these stories. You come back. Like last night, we're up till 11:30, almost midnight. You were telling me about all these things that happened to you.
Yeah.
It's just hilarious. I love it.
Yeah. How did I know I was going to wake up that morning and by that evening I'd have a prophet calling me up out of a crowd to give me
From South Africa.
some words. Right. But hey,
like,
okay.
What world do you live in?
I live in an awesome world.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's, can I say one more thing to you?
Yeah.
I think it's people's, I think you have to re-establish what you think living in a magical or mystical or godly sense is and what that means.
Reestablish what it means?
Yeah, because I think when you think, you hear somebody saying, I live in this magic world, you're thinking, okay, what could be, the me 5 years ago would have thought magical meant something completely different than it does now. I had to really take an inward journey for so many years to appreciate the smallness and hugeness of this magical way of living all at the same time, because the old me wouldn't have appreciated on a silent retreat that I go on, a hawk flying overhead or a rock in the shape of something that meant something to me, or the way that nature exposes answers to you or comfort to you. It's small things that become so grand that you start to look for more and more of the natural, small things that are actually the answers, instead of, the old me would have been like, well, a miracle would have been I win the lottery, or this huge dream comes, or everything's easy all of a sudden, but I'm realizing it's not about easy, it's not about money, and it's not about huge. It's these things that become so much bigger than any huge thing. It's like you almost don't know what could be so huge that it could be magical to you. Like you think it has to be as big as a magic show of some guy, like watching some guy in a circus show cut a lady in half and put her back together.
Some crazy thing.
You think it has to be so crazy. But those things in your life become that magical and that crazy to you when you know how it works. Yeah. I mean, an example is I was walking barefoot on the beach, last summer. I was doing a lot of that. Every morning I really grounded myself, and I'd been going through this time where monarch butterflies were surrounding me every single day. I'd walk out the house and there'd be monarchs like literally following me, and there was this message of butterflies and hope and renewal and things. And I was walking on the beach and I found this shell that just had this uncanny resemblance to a perfect butterfly. I mean,
it was probably like a fossilized outline.
That's what it looks like. It's so
monarch butterfly.
But I honestly think it was probably a shell. And you think, what did that shell's journey have to go through to break it into this shape of something? It's like chiseling a marble statue.
Right.
It was like it was in there, but it wasn't its time to come out. But I thought, how many rocks did this have to pummel against to make? I mean, it was just too ridiculous to become this perfect shape. And I don't know how many years or how many scenarios that rock had to go through to get to that shape. But it washed up right on the time I happened to be walking by to see it, to speak to me. And I was like, that's intense. I picked it up and kept it close and kept meditating on it. Well, the very next day, I go out for another barefoot walk on the beach, and like basically in my path again is a perfectly shaped shell as a perfect cocoon. It looks like a cocoon. And I thought, wow, one day I get butterfly, the next day I get a cocoon. And I put the two together and I thought, wow, this is a perfect speaking to me of where I am in my life. I'm exiting one phase and I'm entering another. And it was just the coolest thing to go, wow, this is magic. This is huge. The person who just walks with their head down looking at their phone or looking out at the ocean, you're not going to catch those things because you didn't wake up that morning in expectation of magic. Yeah,
I think that's cool. It's cool to look for the little stuff, because people could say, oh, you're crazy, or you're looking at this stuff too deeply.
You're making everything a meaning.
You're making everything have meaning. But like we were talking about last night, if we're spiritual beings,
everything does have meaning.
Everything does have meaning. So, I mean, it's just a choice of whether or not you want to live in a world that you think is maybe crazy, or if you want to live in a world that's structured and logical and everything's uniformist. We're very right brain and deterministic. Like if you want to live in that world, that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's nothing wrong in living in the world that you live in too, because it's much more exciting. I think the balance comes where, sharing your insights with, a close group of people that, will protect that.
Right.
Because you can't go around sharing this kind of stuff with people that just do not see the world this way.
Totally.
I mean, they're going to think you're crazy, and it's just not worth it.
You're opening up yourself. You know what that does? Not only does it open you up to a bunch of judgment that's hard for a lot of people, including myself, to be okay with, because we like to be accepted and, things like that. But I was talking with Robin about it, and it's like you choose carefully who you share with, because it will cheapen your experience.
Okay.
It takes, in my opinion and her opinion, it takes away the magic. Every time you share a little bit of something that you knew to be true, that was for you, and yet somebody goes, I think that's crazy, or they look at you cross-eyed, it chips away at the magic of it. And pretty soon you're like you're left to wonder if that was truly for you or if that was just all stupid.
And you know what, too? There's another layer to this also. When you see those rocks like that, in terms of truth, it could be that God is speaking to you, or it could be that God is not speaking to you, right? But really, if you believe that God is speaking to you, that's all that matters. If he's actually speaking to you or not is almost irrelevant.
Yeah.
So it cheapens that too, because if the person is saying, oh, well, that doesn't happen, blah, 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 God doesn't speak like that. Okay, that's one thing. But if you believe it so strongly that he is, then that's a separate layer, sort of like getting the diagnosis. That's a separate disease aside from the actual disease itself. So if you strongly believe that, then and someone comes along and squashes it, it's kind of, it takes away both layers. It takes away the truth of it actually happening, if it were true,
or the possibility of it,
and the fact that you believed
thinking,
it,
right?
The fact that you believed it, they're cheapening that too.
Well, if it goes back to science is even proving the power of belief, so then you're just screwing yourself a bunch of different ways, really,
right?
Because then you're taking away the power of belief. And then when you don't have a power of belief, then it's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point of believing in anything if you don't, it's like we all get to choose what we believe in, and that's what becomes real to us, I think.
Right.
It's a pretty bizarre concept, but it seems to be true.
Yeah.
I mean, even the Bible has quotes about that I don't think people understand when you read it, how it's meant to be read. As a man thinketh in his heart, so shall he be. It's like what we're thinking about and what we believe, I believe, really just becomes your reality. It becomes your faith. It becomes your... what
becomes your whole world.
Yeah. I mean, Laura, today she was saying how hard that was to kind of, quote, come out of the closet and give to the world her gift because she's afraid of being judged. But I'm like, if that's what whether or not she was seeing those things, which I believe she probably was, I don't know how you could really fake that and have a great outcome giving people readings and stuff. But if she didn't have that, she came to a crossroads, it seems like, where she could have kept squelching it, or she rose into it, and she chose to rise into it. And I just think that's cool, because the belief in herself and the belief in the system has gained a lot of people a lot of help. So I don't know, that's her saving grace was in the belief,
Yeah, and the belief that it's true and she should do that. I mean, that's the biggest thing for people. I mean, it's one thing to sort of go after your dream if you want to create an internet company, or it's one thing to go after your dream if you want to create a product that might sell on late night TV that helps clean your car better. But it's another thing to go after your dream if you are living in a world that's so structured and logical, and your dream is to help people with psychic healings and stuff like that. I mean, that's not very well received in today's culture. And so a lot of people have this desire to go after their dream, but then they get all this judgment. And so there comes a point where you either have to make a decision whether you're going to follow what it is you want to do, regardless of what people are going to think about you.
Right. Which is sometimes a hard road to hoe.
Incredibly hard. Or you can just decide to keep living as you're living. And if you're okay with that, then you're going to be okay with that. But I think that, like she said, if you don't follow your dream, if you don't follow what you're supposed to be doing, what's the point of being here at all? Because if you're supposed to do X and you're doing Y,
right,
then, whether or not it's reincarnation and you decided to come here before, and do X, or whether or not God preordained you to do X and you're doing Y, either way, you're supposed to do X and you're doing X and you're supposed to do Y. So regardless, it's, you're not living what you're supposed to be doing. And so some part of you is going to be dying every day.
That's so true. Like you said about your cells dying, but just everything within. It's like, what is the point? Like she was saying, unfortunately, why be here anymore? Like,
what's the point?
Of course, I think that's why when a lot of people retire, they have no purpose. They get sick a lot of times, or they have a heart attack, and you think, oh, this is their time to live life, and instead they start dying. It's because they feel like their purpose has been stripped.
Right.
And they have no purpose anymore. So your body will go along with what you believe, and that's saying that's putting the belief out there that you're kind of done. You know?
Yeah, it's subconsciously saying to life and to God and to the universe that, hey, I am retiring. I'm tired, and I'm going to be retired. And I'm done. I've got no other purpose. So all of a sudden, your cells start shutting down. And why wouldn't they? Because
it makes sense.
Even if you spent 40 years doing something you're not supposed to do, but you kind of enjoyed it and you kind of liked it, and you spent 40 years doing it, and you thought it was a part of you, and you kind of identified with your role, you spent 40 years doing that, and even though it wasn't the actual purpose of your life,
right,
you still feel like that was you, and that was my role on the earth, and all of a sudden you take even something that's not your ideal, you take that away,
right,
and your body still says, all right, well, it's now that you're retired, it's time to go. So why not just constantly live and doing what you're supposed to be doing, and do that till the day you die and not retire?
Well, that's what we always talk about. That's when you know you found your true purpose, is finding something that you're never done with your purpose. Like, why would you ever want to be done with anything that you love?
Right?
Yeah.
I'm tired and I'm going to retire.
Yeah.
I'm just going to retire all day long.
I'm going to keep retire. It's pretty wild. That's sad.
It is weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that was a doozy, wasn't it?
I loved it.
It's quite the show.
Pretty good.
LauraPowers.net. I like her website, healingpowers.net.
Healingpowers.net.
That's pretty cool.
It's good.
I like it.
She was a joy to have on.
Yeah, so we'll put links to that movie Thrive and the books that we talked about, What's in the Way is the Way, and all kinds of stuff like that. So we'll put links on the show notes if you guys want to grab those. extremehealthradio.com/412. Those are sort of designed so you can listen to the interviews as you're driving along in your car or on a run, and you don't have to take notes. So thanks to Kate for taking great notes.
No problemo.
And so anyway, thank you guys for joining us. Really appreciate it. We are 100% listener supported, and so I'd appreciate it if you guys would be able to go to our store and look at all the different products we have in our store. Got tons of stuff. Recently,
and we're adding things.
Adding stuff. We recently added some Energy Muse jewelry that I think you guys would appreciate. This sort of crystals and jewelries with intention in it.
We added grounding sheets.
Yes.
We've had a really renewed love of the study of EMF lately, because we believe that our apartment does have some issues with that. So we've got ourselves some earthing sheets, and people have been loving those.
People have been loving those.
Yeah, you guys might want to check those out. I think for the price, you seem to be gaining from what they seem to be doing. You gain a lot of good for a small amount of money, and just knowing that you spend a lot of your life sleeping.
Yeah, it's good.
Why not help yourself out? They're pretty good.
And for all you crazy people out there, we have the Vortexer, the Vitalizer Plus, which introduces a structured vortex energy and a 0-point sort of energetic structure to the water.
Nothing sounds crazy to me anymore. That's what's funny.
I know, right?
Love it.
It's all crazy. So all that stuff is on our store. So I appreciate you guys a lot. And another way you guys can support us too, if you really want to, we would appreciate it, is bookmarking our Amazon link. And then the next time you make a purchase on Amazon, you use the bookmark, and that way we'll get credit every single time that you make a purchase. That really helps us a lot. And I know that a lot of people don't remember to go through our link, and that's why if you bookmark it and go through the bookmark, it helps us. We can't see what you buy, but we get a little commission. And anytime you shop on Amazon, please think about us. We would really appreciate that. And another way that people are supporting us too is through Patreon, and that's a great way to support us. And we desperately crave and need your support on Patreon. So if you want to donate like $1 a month, it comes out once a month. People think that it comes out 4 times a month because we do a show every week. But if you can donate, $1 a show, that'll be 4 shows a month, and you can put a cap on it. So if we do 10 shows a month, you still only get charged $4. Comes out once a month, and it's a great way to support us. We have people supporting us $15 a show, $20 a show, as little as 25 cents a show. So any little bit you can do to help us would be amazing, and would help us continue our work, because we want to keep doing more shows for you guys. So consider going on Patreon. There's links to that right on our website. We'll put links in the show notes for this as well. And supporting us on there. But if you can't do any of that, that's okay too. We don't require any of it. All these shows are free. We'll continue doing them for free. forever. So just know that we will continue doing our work, and we know that God will support us. So if you want, though, you can share our shows on Facebook or share our status updates on Facebook. That